Hi, I'm Jasmine Piepho, the Priority to Positive Supervising Trainer at Via Nova Training. Prior to joining Via Nova in 2021, my equestrian experiences came largely from my time managing large barns for a summer camp program and a trail riding outfitter in Glacier National Park. Working with up to 60 horses who were performing the same job, I recognized that they each have their own personalities and respond differently to certain approaches in handling. This led me to learn more about positive reinforcement with my personal horse and opened my eyes to the opportunity of using this training approach. Today, we will discuss positive reinforcement training and how it is often misunderstood and overly simplified, leading to several misconceptions and apprehensions about adopting it. Via Nova Training is committed to bringing easy and accessible training methods to all equestrians with our priority to positive approach. This video will address 3 of the common myths surrounding positive reinforcement training and debunk them while at the same time introducing the science and methods used in it. Let's start with myth number 1. I already do positive reinforcement. I give my horses treats and pat them on the neck when they do a good job. While all horses usually appreciate a handful of cookies, it doesn't mean these rewards are connected to their training or even the concept of positive reinforcement. It also doesn't mean having a positive attitude, giving our horses a pat on the neck for a job well done, handing them an apple when we arrive at the barn, or giving them a break from pressure when they do what we want. So, what do we mean when we use the term positive reinforcement? We also call it R+ for short. Positive reinforcement means training in a systematic way that communicates to the horse that they have an opportunity to earn a reward when they perform the correct behavior. This type of training is based on a century of scientific research and successful practical application with animals. In fact, it's been used for decades in zoos, marine parks, and with pet training. So now that we know that positive reinforcement is about much more than simple rewards, where do we start? The first thing we must understand about animal behavior is that everything an animal does serves a purpose. There is very little an animal does that is on accident. There is always a reason. They are constantly learning to adapt to their environments and doing whatever it takes to survive. Knowing this, how can we get our horses to do something they probably won't naturally do, like willingly walk into a trailer on their own? You need to learn to speak their language. You need to understand their motivation. Motivation comes in 2 basic forms for animals: to seek or avoid. We all know you can get a horse to move by swinging a rope. They will see that rope as pressure and actively try to avoid it, resulting in the behavior of movement. Instead of using traditional methods of avoidance, we focus on a horse's motivation to seek. When we create behavior with positive reinforcement, this activates a different part of the horse's brain: the seeking system. This system is like our secret weapon. By activating the seeking system, we tap into a part of the horse's brain that brings about curiosity and problem solving. They want to participate. And yes, we use food as our primary reinforcer. You were probably wondering when we would get back to that. We use food because food is one of the strongest motivators for a horse. We offer treats to reward the behavior we want to see more of. Why does food work so well in positive reinforcement? As grazers, horses are hardwired to search for food. It is something we can control in order to influence behavior. And the horse becomes invested in the training and the outcome of the training. There are other types of reinforcement we can use, but food is our first and often best option. For those of you who would never use treats because it's cheating or unsafe, you should consider these benefits. As we mentioned, when you use positive reinforcement, it activates the seeking system of the brain versus the fight or flight area. In numerous studies, when using positive reinforcement, there is a spike in dopamine and endorphins, while pressure and release have been shown to increase stress cortisol levels. One of the most important things to understand about positive reinforcement is that the learner is the only one who gets to decide what they find rewarding. The trainer doesn't get to claim that a pat on the neck is a reward just because it's meant to be. If you worked hard at digging a ditch and you got a gold star when you were hoping for money, is that gold star reinforcing? Are you going to dig as hard again knowing that's all you'll get? We can and do condition non-food reinforcers like a pat, but when we're training new or difficult behaviors, we use a strong and rewarding reinforcer. And that's most likely going to be food. It's actually amazing how much our horses will do for one slice of carrot, but they're the ones who decide if they like carrots. How do we communicate "that's right" to horses? We're not just handing out food randomly. They need to understand what they did that earned the food reward. The key is finding a way to tell them when they are doing something right. Do you remember the game of hot and cold in school? It's always a game of hot and cold for our learners. A horse always has to guess what we want from it. Because as humans, we can talk to each other, so this game is fairly simple to play. For animals, we need another way to communicate that they are on the right track. That is where a marker signal comes in. A marker signal is one of those aspects of training with positive reinforcement that can make it seem like magic. When you watch a marine mammal show, the whales and dolphins are leaping through hoops, tossing balls, and slapping their flippers. Meanwhile, in the background, the humans are blowing whistles like mad. Now and then, the animals rush to the side of the pool to be tossed some fish. That's what it looks like from the outside anyway. The whistles may seem random to the audience, but they have a precise meaning to the animals. They're marking which behavior, jump, slap, or tossing the ball, earned a fish at the exact moment the animal does it. A marker communicates instant information to the animal, even at a distance, about whether the behavior they are doing earned them what they want. As odd and magical as it appears from the outside, this makes perfect sense when we look at what nature requires from animals for them to meet their primary needs. A predator must go through a whole series of complex learned behaviors to get the ultimate reinforcer, a meal. All animals are capable of understanding that time gap between the motivation, their actions, and the reward, and recognizes the signals along the way. A grazing animal like a horse must learn what gap in the mountains leads to the pass where there's water in a mountain stream. A colt passing a certain boulder with its mom on the way to the gap becomes conditioned to recognize that boulder as the place to turn. At first, it was just a rock. But after it reliably predicts water enough times, it's a marker. It says you're on the right track, keep going, it's just around the corner. Nature has made sure that animals get it. They learn quickly to recognize the signals that predict the outcome of their behavior. All types of signals, if noticed, can tell them something about what the result of their behavior will be. Going back to our hot and cold game, how do we tell an animal they are getting warmer? We can teach our horse to recognize our chosen marker to mean, yes, you just did the right thing to earn a reward. Animal trainers often do use a clicker, which is why clicker training has become a shorthand term for positive reinforcement training. But you can also choose to use a unique voice sound that doesn't occur often in conversation, like the letter T. Since our hands are often occupied when we're riding or handling horses, many equestrians prefer a verbal marker. It's important to remember that the same learner can be conditioned to recognize more than one marker. The best marker from your point of view as the trainer may vary with the situation and the individual animal. We can use a clicker for precision groundwork at liberty and a specific touch on the withers during competition with the same horse, as long as they are well conditioned to recognize either as a reliable predictor of food coming soon. Another common concern leads us to myth number 2. Positive reinforcement will create a pushy horse that may bite me, or worse. Why does a foal struggle to its feet in its first hours of life? So it can get to mom and food. It is a powerful motivator for all animals. When we use food to train, we can become like the magician's apprentice and find ourselves in trouble if we don't know what we're doing. This is why most traditional equestrians wisely don't use food in training and think it is a bad idea. It's also one of the areas where training equines using food differs from training smaller animals, such as dogs. It's not that scary when a basset hound gets really excited and starts jumping around in anticipation of a piece of hot dog. It's another thing entirely when a 1,200-pound, 17-hand warm blood is leaping around and kicking in excitement near you. Why do we even bother then? Because if we use food correctly, safely, and systematically to train, we open a whole world of communication with our horses that we haven't been taking advantage of. When we begin to train horses with food, The very first default lesson we're going to teach is manners. We're careful and disciplined about this. We do not want our horses nosing or pushing or nipping at us in hopes of getting food. These are all normal, typical behaviors horses exhibit around food, and they aren't bad for doing it. We just haven't taught them yet what will work for them. Manners means the horse learns to stay in their own space and wait for the food to come to them. This is Tinkerbell, but she wasn't always so polite. Tinkerbell is a typical horse very motivated by food. Before we taught her manners, she actively nosed her owner a lot. Watch while we use a voice marker T to teach Tinkerbell to keep her head away and stand politely to wait for a small piece of carrot or apple.
Do I wait?
Yep, don't do anything till it's there. And it's okay when she stops nudging you, you can say T and feed her, but feed her where you want her.
She's looking for Heidi, I think. I don't know.
There. T.
T.
Little gears are turning.
T. 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 Good girl. T. T. T.
We can call this horsey zen. Leave the food to get the food. You can start in protected contact with more impulsive or aggressive horses. As they become more certain about what works, they will relax and begin to wait quietly, at which point you can start work directly in their space with them. Notice that this learning is all about opportunity for Tinkerbell. We don't punish or correct her when she's wrong. Instead, we use the marker to help her learn what earns her the reward while she works to figure it out. Here are some helpful tips for training your horse to have good food manners. First, start in some sort of protected contact. This could be a stall door or a fence. To make the food less exciting, time your sessions to come after a meal. If your horse seems to be overly excited around food, use hay or chaff, instead of something that might be really appealing, like apples or carrots. You can expect good food manners to happen after about a week of working with your horse. Do short sessions of 3 to 5 minutes at a time, a couple of times a day. Our final myth that we'll discuss is myth number 3. I can't use positive reinforcement in the saddle or with competitive disciplines. To address this myth, let's start at training a horse to move off your leg. For most riders, a kick means go. But why did the horse start to move forward? Horses aren't born understanding that a kick in the side means they need to start moving. They are required to figure it out. Because it is aversive and unpleasant to be kicked in the sides, they tend to learn quickly that if they move, the kicking stops. While this does help us get more of what we want, it's not always that precise. And if you have bad timing and keep kicking after the horse moves, they might get confused. I'm sure all of you have seen horses that have shut down because they gave up trying to guess what the rider wants. Now that we have this new way to communicate with our horse using a marker, training them to go on cue looks a lot different for our Via Nova horses than squeezing or kicking them. We train them to go by creating an opportunity. We reward their response to following a target. A target is any object used to focus the horse's attention. Training a horse to touch and follow a target might seem like quite an odd thing for many equestrians. We can tell our horses non-verbally that moving forward is the correct response by using the marker signal the moment they start to do it. Then, as part of our training process, we fade the target out so that moving forward itself becomes an opportunity for the horse to get rewarded. They start to love doing it. As the horse learns what action, like go forward, earns a reward, we systematically replace the target with the traditional aids, like our hands, seat, and leg. But in our case, they have become cues for opportunity for reward instead of a warning that says, do it or else. A lot of people ask us if you use positive reinforcement under saddle, and the answer is Yes. We frequently use this method to transform lazy, sour, stuck, won't move off my leg horses into horses that promptly and happily move forward on the light aid. No spurs, no whip, no escalating pressure. Here's one example of using positive reinforcement under saddle. Our trainer gives a rein lift as the cue, which is a learned signal that tells the horse to turn. He then turns his body and earns a food reward. The difference between training a cue with positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement is in the consequence. In traditional training, if the horse doesn't do the behavior after getting the aid, the consequence will commonly be an increase in pressure. Do it or else. When using positive reinforcement, the opposite is true. Once a cue is learned, it signals an opportunity. This is Wesley. He came to us right off the track as an awkward 4-year-old and has since been conditioned to the marker, has learned manners, targeting, liberty leading, and how to respond to verbal cues without equipment. This video shows a trainer helping establish the foundation behavior of Wesley, changing from walk to trot on a verbal cue alone, using what we call a reverse round pen. It's our way of ensuring our horses have choice without equipment, and we have protected contact. You will notice here that the verbal cue was trot. And as soon as Wesley trotted, the trainer gave him the marker signal, T, and then a food reward. Once this is well established on the ground, we can begin to move it under saddle. In this video, you will see how Wesley does a walk to trot transition, but this time under saddle. Let's watch how trainer first gives the verbal cue that Wesley knows. Then the next time she first cues with a tactile leg aid, followed by the verbal cue, then eventually the tactile cue on its own. As you notice in the video, the trainer has different outfits because this took place over a number of sessions. This positive reinforcement training results in an identical performance in the competitive ring. It is the same look, the same result. It's simply a difference in the learning and building of each behavior required for each event. Our horses are invested partners in both the training and the competitive ring. They bring their curiosity and a willingness to play our game because they are rewarded for their problem solving. We call our approach priority to positive because we focus on using positive reinforcement while respecting traditional equestrian standards and equipment. It's extremely important for you to understand that our approach doesn't mean we compromise safety with horses. If you're leading or riding a horse that's panicking or flying like a kite, or find yourself in any situation that could lead to a bad outcome for people or horses, you do what you need to do to keep control. And then we will come back later in a safer situation and see if we can use R+ methods to teach the horse a better way to cope. At Villanova Training, we've created a user-friendly and systematic approach and would love to share resources with you as you embark on learning more about positive reinforcement. Please reach out to us with any questions or if you need any assistance on your positive reinforcement journey. Sign up for our newsletter to get updates on everything new and exciting at Villanova. Thanks for watching and learning.